This is where we get into deep cuts against things I love with the Barbie patriarchy and the Mojo Dozo Casa House sequence, and I felt attacked. That's a joke, guys.
Okay,
I thought it looked much cooler than the Barbie Land, to be honest.
But they went after Rocky, and I was like, no.
I felt that one too.
Yeah. But
I mean, I think that kind of represents a fundamental problem that's, well, I'm trying not to generalize, with a lot of, I'll just say a lot of women, you two not included.
I am tomboy. I understand. I feel this pain. The Rocky thing hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. It's this kind of, well, okay, I'll drop another Charmed reference in here, but back in the day, when I was a teenager and people, I remember like there was a message board discussions like, oh, what would a male Charmed be like with three brothers instead of three sisters? And I remember someone saying, oh, it'll be so boring. They just sit around the house watching sports all day. And I'm just thinking, and I remember kind of feeling a little attacked by that. Well, I was 14 and very thin skinned. So, but yeah, it's the whole, a lot of women love to paint the idea of like, oh, men are simple, women are complicated.
God, yes. I hate that.
Yeah. And this is one of the things where I think it's important because in media, so much of the discussions that are had are very academic / masculine coded, that we don't have, and everything has to be on topic and very, very and part of the reason we started this series is to just free range, right? Mm-hmm. We're not going to worry about staying on topic. We're just going to let the conversation go where it goes, because that's where, beautiful moments like Bobby's saying Little Women and song going off occur, right?
Well, do you want me to go off?
On what? Let me tee up.
It is. Oh yeah, sorry. It is relevant to this
topic.
Well,
it is, and I want to circle back around to something I think you were starting to say, but I want to see if you're right, because one of the things that seems to be this battle of the sexes thing that keeps happening is that women feel very sidelined in a lot of media because it's media by and about men. And then you get the female-driven media, the vortex that is She-Hulk. But, She-Hulk, I think, was very punch you in the face, and I understood that one better. But it is the lack of understanding of the experience of men in media for women, and the lack of understanding of the experience of women in media for men that is actually the problem. We have to look at it holistically, instead of, oh, look at how bad men are, or look at how bad women are, feminists are, red pill is. And what I thought was interesting about the Barbie movie is they definitely kind of had that pain and loneliness and kind of pathetic quality of the manosphere, but they did it with Clint Eastwood westerns and the Marlboro Man and Sylvester Stallone's penchant for fur coats, instead of, and Bill Clinton of all people. I thought that was very interesting that they had.
Is that a thing men are supposed to like?
I think he represents
I suppose he had a lot of sex. I suppose he had a lot of sex scandals, so I guess that means he was...
I think that's what it was.
I mean, Bill Clinton, the big thing during the Clinton era was Bill can cry, but Hillary can't.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that's why they included him. Maybe they did it because they knew that young audiences will still rebel if you say anything against Obama. But
they also had a picture of one of the Bushes.
Yes, they did
that montage. So it wasn't just
that.
Bill
that
Clinton.
That was one of the moments that I felt they were really threading the needle of not hitting conservatives too hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I still delight in that picture of Matt Gaetz on the red carpet for Barbie with his wife, and she was very upset. He said nothing afterwards, and
like, here's the thing. I think she was the one who was talking about, oh, the Barbie I remember represented faith and family, and I'm like, What part?
Yeah. What planet?
What
planet? Yeah.
That is such projection. Barbie has never been that.
She was too sexy, considered too sexy for kids when she came out in what, 59?
I think so.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a big Barbie scholar. That's my friend. He knows everything. But Bobby, what did you think about, because they did, I think they deliberately wanted people to feel bad for Ken. I think, the theme of whenever something is dominant, whenever one gender is dominant over other genders, somebody feels like shit and somebody's left out. But they did the thing Marvel movies don't do, where they do let the emotion hang. And
I very much appreciated that. Oh God, I'm so tired of the bathos in Marvel movies.
That scene where he was like face down on the bed and like squealing, he was so upset, and you kept waiting for the joke, and he did do little poses here and there, but that was the scene where I'm like, Ryan Gosling's good, because switching from the performance, I'm good, to the really authentic emotion, to the slightly comedic but not Star-Lord.
It was handled well.
I don't know if he practiced the shit out of that, or he's just, because Ryan Gosling is this interesting actor because he's in The Notebook, and then he switched to a whole bunch of really hard-boiled action movies.
Yeah, he was a heartthrob, and he had to kind of do the Leonardo DiCaprio thing of like shaking that off.
And so he's an interesting guy to play it. But Bobby, it must have been uncomfortable, because it's almost like the experience people have with Solomon in Boss Fight, that were like, that poor motherfucker. But then at the end, him kind of, I mean, that's what I think the sequel is. I'd see a Ken movie.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to see a sequel.
Well, okay, here's my Ken sequel. Okay, because Barbie's story is told.
Oh yeah.
But Ken needs someone. Ken deserves somebody, because Ken, two things about Ken. One, he actually is a decent guy. He's naive because he's like an 8-year-old boy, but he said, when I found out patriarchy wasn't about horses, I really lost interest.
I loved that line so much.
He really didn't want to be in charge. He just wanted her to think he was good. And that's his whole motivation.
And like, I think it's also, I mentioned flipping the script on so much commentary. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of women, like, okay, we have the black pill and the very loud online feminists who, the way they talk, they want a matriarchy. Like, just
which is
whether they know it or not, that's how they talk. And I'm like, that's crap. That's what I liked about the commentary in it, and how we do have the matriarchy in Barbie land, where it's like, it shows that one in control over the other isn't good. Like, where did the Ken sleep? I don't know. Well, great. That says something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was comparing it to James Bond and all these Bond girls who, they don't have a personality. They just hang off James Bond. And that's what Ken is in the beginning.
The one I thought about was Big Bang Theory, where women don't exist in that series unless they're connected to one of the guys.
Oh yeah, TV tropes would call that. I think, well, if they're a couple, then they'd call that the satellite love interest.
Yeah.
And the way to determine if someone is a satellite love interest is ask yourself, what do they do when they're not being this person's spouse?
Yeah, and the what's her name? The lady from Roseanne, Sarah Gilbert. She was a really good character, but they couldn't find a romantic plot for her, and so they wrote her out because they couldn't figure out what to do with her. And one of the things I thought was interesting about the Barbie movie is we see how unfair it is when it was done to Ken. But we don't see how much that's done over and over and over again to female love interests. And but it seems like because we're so used to that we needed that trope inverted to see what a mistake it is. I've been in development meetings for series, and I've been really unpopular because they'll do to 4 to 6 characters. And it's like, oh, you got the best friend from school, and then you've got his antagonist, his rival, and then you've got the girlfriend. And I'll say, okay, what does she do? Well, she's the girlfriend. Okay, why? What do you mean? Why is she the right person for him? And there's no answer.
Yeah, because that's the real kind of issue that was the issue with the manic pixie dream girl trope, but people missed the point of that. It wasn't the quirkiness that was bad, it was the lack of independent goals outside being this guy's girl and livening up his life.
I will say the quirkiness has become so watered down and so overdone, and I am so sick of the quirky girl trope at this point.
We'll have to do that in another episode because that's a whole
sorry.
No, because it's right. Because I mean, the performance of Barbie that Margot Robbie did, I keep waffling because I think she was the right person to play her because she almost played her as a nerd, but there was almost too much going on in her eyes from the beginning. I mean, Margot Robbie is clearly somebody who doesn't identify as attractive as the rest of the world sees her. And she is very charismatic. If you look at her, her facial construction and everything like that, she's sort of a psycho pretty. And I never found her Harley Quinn terribly sexy because she was so tragic. And she brought some of that into Barbie, but it came in at like a 3 instead of the 11 that our Harley Quinn does.
I will say it was very interesting because I'm pretty sure for like the first 85% of the movie, they were airbrushing and photoshopping out any wrinkles on her, because there's a point towards the end where she's crying and suddenly I could see these wrinkles around her eyes, and I'm like, she's
got very creased eyes because she's so thin. She doesn't have a much of a subdermal fat layer.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, that wasn't there before. And so that's how I'm like, okay, yeah, I get her becoming more human, where it's like, and it's also the whole, I'm not perfect anymore. And I did laugh at the narrators. As a side note, Margot Robbie was the wrong person to. I cackled at that line.
That got a big laugh both times.
Yeah, and it's
in
like
the theater.
Even when she had the creases around her eyes, she was still gorgeous. So I'm not criticizing that. I just thought it was an interesting choice that they had, where they airbrushed her for so much, but then as she is there, it did hit a note where it felt like it was falling into a bit of the pretty women can't be smart trope, because she even not even trope, but just this idea, because there is the point, Liana, you mentioned that she spends so much of the time crying and listening, and there is a point, because even in the opening sequence we see she's going to these events for the president signing something into law and attending the Nobel.
And she's just there.
She's just in the audience. Yeah. And I noticed that at first, but didn't quite fully register it. And then at the end, she says, I'm not president. I'm not a doctor. I'm not this and that. And I'm just stereotypical Barbie. And for me, I'm like, and that's still a good thing. Because Gloria talks about how, I couldn't be you, so I tried to make you me. And like, for me, I love aspirational characters. I've never You know, Liana, I told you when we were talking about it last night, Barbie and the Disney princesses were never what made me insecure about my own body. It was watching videos of Miley Cyrus perform, and I'm seeing how thin her legs were compared to mine. And that hit me a lot more than any of the fictional stuff. And
Yeah.
so I like aspirational. I like things that are just nice and pretty and happy. And so I did have that bit of let her be pretty and nice and friendly, and she doesn't have to be special beyond
This
just being Barbie.
this is an actual mistake I think the film made, and I'm really surprised. We're all writers here.
Mhm.
So I guarantee I'm going to get a big yes when I say this. Stereotypical Barbie was the wrong label, because a
Yeah.
stereotype is a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. Prototypical is a
There.
first typical or preliminary model of something. That is what base Barbie is. She's basic Barbie. She's not stereotypical Barbie. What? She's the idea. They keep saying she's the idea. She is the potential. She is the original base model. She's not a stereotype. She's not oversimplified. That's Barbie. You know?
Yes.
Now, I guess we can argue that because it's Gloria playing, that's Gloria's insecurities. But I still, every time they said it, I was like, this is not like, that wasn't, you know, trauma of being forced to conform me. That was writer me going, this isn't right. It's the same button that gets hit in Twilight when Bella knew Edward would never be interested in her. No, Bella thought. Bella was certain. Bella didn't know. Bella was wrong. Right?
Yeah, because sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, because I was having this thought earlier, because we said we were going to talk about chick flicks in general.
Yeah.
And like a lot of what we consider chick flicks are, you know, romantic comedies, and
which are
there's
neither.
there's a distinction between something that is deliberately, you know, aimed at women and girls to enjoy, and something that is intended as a date movie to take girls to.
Right.
And I realized it's very simple to work out which one is which, and it's if the blonde girl is evil.
Yes, that
like,
sounds about right.
Or the redhead is slutty.
Yeah, something like The Princess Diaries, obviously, like
The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, and
Cruella.
yeah, and Mia's intended to be, you know, the wish fulfillment figure for the girl, for the girl watching or whatever. And then something like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Kate Hudson is there for the man taking his girlfriend to lust after, while she lusts after Matthew McConaughey. You know, because back in the 2000s, that's what they believed. You know, there was still heteronormativity. You know.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of really good conversations, and poor Bobby, this might get a little uncomfortable here, because I do think that many of the things, patriarchy is not only enforced by men, patriarchy is enforced by women, and men, regular guys, end up getting blame for a system that is also propped up by women. I mean, Gloria needing Barbie to be affirmational instead of aspirational, where Barbie was always intended as an aspirational figure.
And that was something that bothered me, because I hate, and I feel like we see it a lot in stories nowadays with like the whole idea of the hot mess, where it's like, we're going to take this character who was something aspirational and we're going to drag it down to make ourselves feel better. And I hate that.
Yeah.
Like, I get having character flaws, but you don't need to make them a terrible person just to make yourself look better.
But
or not even look better, just feel better.
And I'm not going to do the Bill Maher thing and say no guy needs that. You know, I was with a 30-year-old woman who said, nobody I know thinks that way. It's like, Bill Maher, you're how old? You're on a date with a 30-year-old dude? That ain't cool anymore. But
is he old enough to remember the Vietnam War?
I think he's done things about the Vietnam War.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just like usually whenever my friends complain about being old, the measuring stick is, can you remember the Vietnam War?
He's
The answer is
67
no, then
years
you're not
old.
old.
He's 67 years old, out
I
with a
assumed he was taking
30-year-old.
his daughter.
He doesn't have any kids.
Oh God. Okay.
No,
I
Yeah.
wonder
he's
why.
never been married. Bill Maher is creeper at the Playboy Mansion who is shameless about it.
And
He
here's-
is so
So he's the Ric Flair.
Bill Maher is the least talented, successful dude in his social group.
Okay.
He is like the Allen of that particular. There's a phenomenon in American media where people who are in the same sort of class together all kind of give each other work.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Mar floats around in that group of very rarefied air, right? He famous producers and very powerful people at networks, and that's why, despite saying some horrendously offensive things that constantly piss people off, he keeps getting new opportunities. Conan O'Brien's the same way.
Wasn't Bill Maher the one who said, "Why do people care about Stan Lee's death?"
Yes.
Yeah.
He's just a troll, but he's a troll with connections.
Yeah. I remember after the Gabby Petito case, I think that was last year, he went off about the whole van life phenomenon, saying that's what people are supposed to do when they're retired. And it's like, okay, but people are miserable at their jobs and their kids have seen that. So they're like, I'm just gonna live in a van now.
Yeah.
And it was very bitter. It was like, okay, I get the feeling you wish you could go off and just do that. Yeah. And you're bitter that younger people have found a way to do what you wish you could do, but you feel you're stuck working.
Yeah. So. But I mean, this is a guy with a track record of pretty much only dating former Playboy models and video vixens. And never married. You could tell he had this show called Politically Incorrect. And you could tell how attractive he thought one of the woman panelists was. It was that 4-person talk format, right? And you could tell if a woman he thought was attractive came up, he'd be, hello, kiss, 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 you know. If a woman he didn't find attractive, hey, how you doing? Handshake, just like the
business
men.
handshake.
And I'd watch every show, and I'd just be like, I could never go on that show because, you know, it would be the we're gonna battle, Enter the Dragon instantly, no matter what reaction he had to me, because it was so freaking obvious.
And funnily enough, today is the 50th anniversary of Enter the Dragon's release.
There you go. Yeah, I'm in the zone.
But actually, there was Song said something like not too long ago that I wanted to actually make a point on about how, you know, characters can be aspirational.
Yeah.
And I've noticed we used to do that in films all the time in these so-called chick flicks. So for context, right? I didn't grow up with sisters, okay, but I had a lot of girl cousins who kind of basically dictated what everything we watched, you know. So I was raised around stuff like Disney Channel and, you know, all these chick flicks. So
that explains so much.
I was too old for that, so I'm going to get an education here. Inform me.
So yes, and my mother would see me watching them with them, assume that's what I liked, so she would take me to see them when they came out, right?
Is that what happened? Oh,
well, okay. It only happened like a couple of times, you know. Once I hit 13 and discovered horror films, I turned the tables on them by making them watch, you know, various things. But yeah, so I mean, but anyway, so I have a knowledge of things like Legally Blonde and Mean Girls and Miss Congeniality and Aquamarine I found on my own. But so what I was getting at is a lot of these like so-called chick flicks still have a lot of interesting things to say. As like, I mean, I know Song is a huge Legally Blonde fan, and I can remember kind of on my first watch of Legally Blonde, I was still pretty young, but I had kind of grown savvy to a lot of the tropes of these kinds of movies at the time. And I thought, okay, when she starts being serious, I'm like, oh god, she is going to have that moment where, you know, she cuts all her hair off and becomes empowered and, you know, starts dressing more like a guy. And when that didn't happen, I was like, oh, that's interesting, because it's basically it's about a woman who trades in her femininity thinking she has to succeed, and then she
Right.
realizes not to do that. It's like she can be herself. It's
Legally
the whole
Blonde is
thing.
a celebration of soft power and persuasion.
We wonder why I love it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's interesting that they show, and this is the thing I think a lot of people don't get about the movie. They get connected to moments. They miss the overall thing, which is that they're showing that skills are transferable.
Yeah,
You
she's
know?
like she's assumed to be shallow because she's in fashion merchandising or whatever, but like her establishing character moment is she schools a shop clerk who assumes she's just a ditzy
That's
daddy's
right.
girl.
Yeah,
I love a blonde with daddy's money.
and the thing about Legally Blonde was I actually think it I don't like the movie Mean Girls. I think it's too on the nose and too
I actually
obvious,
like
so
it.
it does nothing. I like it as a movie, but compared to Legally Blonde, I found Legally Blonde smarter.
Yeah, Mean Girls does have a huge flaw that Barbie kind of leaned into as well, and that is with the Janice character, who is a shit tier human being. This is me
Right.
going off now. You're about to see me going off, right?
All right.
Yay!
Okay. There's a fan theory that Janice used to be the queen bee, and that Regina did to her what she's getting Katie to do to Regina. And as soon as I heard that,
yeah.
as soon as I heard that, I was like, yes, Janice is a total mean girl. She is a horrible, manipulative person who uses Katie to get her revenge. And it's like, Katie obviously becomes a bad person as well, and Regina already is. And like all these, basically every girl in the film except Karen, ironically enough, with the name, is like is, you know, flawed in some way, gets their comeuppance, learns their lesson.
Right.
Janice never does.
No.
It's like she gives that big speech about kind of coming out about everything, and she gets cheered by everyone.
Yeah.
And I even noticed in that speech, she's so crafty as well. She attributes like the really horrible, manipulative stuff to Katie, like, oh, she made out with Regina's boyfriend and convinced him to break up with her, which is deceptive. You know, she just told him he was being cheated on. And then she says like all the funny stuff to herself, like, you know, oh, we gave you foot cream instead of face wash. And like Janice never gets called out on her behavior.
Yeah, the whole "I'm sorry we called you weird Barbie behind your back and also to your face" thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Sasha of the Barbie movie is Sasha in the Barbie movie is Janice in Mean Girls. She never gets called alike. And that again, I think is the fact
backhandedly kind of punishing femininity as again.
It is at its core a mom movie. And so the wish fulfillment of bonding with her daughter, Gloria's really blind to what an awful bully her daughter is, because she is so desperate for her daughter's approval. Because Gloria's stunted, you know, when you're still taking your shit out on Barbie dolls and you're, you know, she's probably 40. But there's so many women out there like that, and I'd love to see something about that. I keep thinking
Yellow Jackets does something like that, but it kind of does it better than Barbie, where it's the Melanie Linsky character has like trouble connecting to her daughter, and you eventually realize it's because the daughter is a really horrible person, but then you realize it's because Shauna is the character's name. Shauna is a horrible person, because she gets it's not really a spoiler to say she has an affair. Okay. She has an affair. The daughter catches her, and basically, Shauna, the mother, blackmails her daughter into keeping it from her husband.
And that happens.
And here's the thing: I am so tired of kids turning out badly, and the parents or the people around the parents saying, "Oh, well, there's nothing you can do about it." Yes, there is, and it's. People are so quick to try and say, oh, well, the parents did the best they could. Not really. Because it's like you can... the idea that a child is just going to be bad no matter how well they're raised. I don't buy that.
No. No,
So
I
it's
mean,
like, no, there's going to be some of it. There's going to be some external factors. But I really believe if you raised your child well and you discipline when needed and you teach them manners and you teach them respect and you teach them all these things and you don't let them get away with things consequence free, there is no reason that child will grow up to be a brat.
Yeah,
Essentially.
that's one of the reasons. Sorry, I just realized kind of how brilliant the Rugrats cartoon was, because that was
the Rugrats cartoon was
yeah, basically they originally conceived Angelica just as this generic bully who would never get comeuppance to teach. They wanted to teach the kids that life isn't fair, but then it was Paul Germain, I believe, who he clashed a lot with Arlene Klasky, who and he wanted
of
strong
Klasky
character.
Sipo. Yeah,
he wanted strong characterization to understand why a character might become this way, and it does it in
Rugrats
a
was
really
dark,
interesting way.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tackled in a really interesting way, because it's like it shows her mother is obviously the girl boss who works very hard, and she is a good mother. It's just she prioritizes work over the daughter, and so there's one point where Angelica misbehaves in the office, and when Charlotte kind of disciplines her, she's like worries, "Are you going to fire me too?" And it shows how Drew, the father, the main reason she's the way she is because he's too afraid to discipline her, and when he finally does, she doesn't know how to deal with it. So
yeah, I mean, kids need structure, and I think that's the one thing that having the dad in there and showing that he's a pretty good guy. He's trying his best too. And I do find it interesting that we interpret hot mess women as realistic women who are just trying their best. We do the former sitcom dad, the former Homer Simpson kind of lovable boob, is now a pejorative. And the only reason I preferred that Gloria and Barbie wasn't a single mom was because she is so stunted and insecure and miserable. And one of the things that I wish Barbie had hammered home more, but hey, it's the start, right? I don't expect these things to be perfect, because even them getting made is, Margot Robbie's on the record saying when she first read the script, she's like, this is amazing. Too bad they'll never let us make it.
And like you said, it's the start of the conversation. And that's why, while there are points I don't agree with, I would rather have this as a start than not have it.
And I think that that's the responsibility of, media about media. I will try not to go off on this. Yes, like us, like feminist criticism.
No frequency.
Rest in peace. Come to bury, not to praise. All right. Why did I just do a Borscht Belt Shakespeare there? That's me.
Because Liana, you are an international treasure.
Because all the world's a stage. Dolores Faye just came out there. What can I say?
Well, I actually want to bring up, Bobby mentioned the soft power of Legally Blonde, and I actually want to bring up another movie entirely.
Okay.
And that's My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh.
What was another interesting movie that has disappeared? Shirley Valentine.
Well, it's like, I don't know that My Big Fat Greek Wedding has disappeared, because the third movie is coming out next month.
But remember, it was this huge thing when it came out, and it sort of now just clicks along. That was another one that just hit because of pent-up demand.
I've never even heard of this movie.
What, Shirley Valentine?
Yeah.
It was a British movie about, this is the movie I compare all the cellulite references to. Because it's an older woman who goes on this sort of voyage to take risks. Just go and have experiences. And so, she has sexual experiences with much younger men, long before the whole cougar thing was. And one of the lines is, he's kissing me stretch marks, And stretch marks were the thing that made a woman unattractive back then, because it's what, obviously pregnancy causes them, among other things. And the cellulite thing, I like the idea that, and this is obviously Greta Gerwig digging down and going, yeah, I don't look like Margot Robbie. I don't look like some of the, even Harry Neff, Hari Neff, I think it's pronounced. But because she's the one in the director's chair in order to do movies like this. Yeah, we all saw Peter Jackson gain weight like crazy making The Lord of the Rings, and there isn't the same pressure on male directors. Male directors can have the crazy hair all over the place, and the big thick glasses and the bags under their eyes, and that's considered, oh, it's proof he's working hard. With women, it's like, you're really letting yourself go, are you okay? And I think that's it was an interesting problem, because cellulite's a particular thing. It's one of those things that no surgery can really get rid of, because you can lipo the fat out, it comes back. And it's one of these things that most women have because of various reasons.
I remember years ago seeing, I think it was TMZ was making snarky comments about, oh, even Scarlett Johansson has cellulite. It's amazing her boyfriend can find her attractive, which
well, Scarlett Johansson has fuller thighs. Of course she does. What it is
the thicker the thighs, the sweeter the prize.
There you go. Somebody's gonna take that the wrong way, but we approve of that message. The
thick thighs save lives, but they're death to pants.
Well, because pants aren't made.
Oh, they're literal death if we watch The Boys, right, Liana? Wink.
That is true. That is true. But I mean, it's this thing about, this is not how straight dudes think, and Bobby, I'm not speaking for you here, but women look at other women, and then the whole gay man catty thing they're the ones that look at other women and go, oh, Scarlett Johansson is cellulite, or oh, Margot Robbie's this and this, and straight guys don't do that.
I mean, because I used to have a time as a women's wrestling journalist, and so doing legitimate commentary on women's matches, and in the comments you would get, I mean, obviously behind a screen name you can't really be sure like the gender of someone, but from the way they wrote, they seemed like, a woman, where they they'd comment on the appearances of the divas and be like, oh my god, her weave looks so bad, oh my god, she looks like a man.
That's the thing about the chat on She-Hulk. When I read it, it's like, a lot of those nasty comments are clearly female coded, so I don't know why people went 4chan and Fandom Menace. As somebody who's subjected to all of it, the insults you get from women and gay men are very different than the insults you get from straight dudes. And so many of those, but I kept saying, no, those were female coded insults. And it's like, people didn't believe me. And this is one of the problems, I think, and this is why it's important to talk about stuff like Ken in Barbie, that media has given us this idea of what men want in women. It's not so. And I know this because of my background doing a show with a hot tub and dancing girls, and I personally found 4 to 6 skinny blondes per episode dancing boring. I find other things equally beautiful, if not personally more beautiful. And so I'm like, I'm going to introduce it and see how it goes. And sure enough, this is not a show where people were trying to be
PC,
enlightened. But they preferred first of all, more variety. But also bigger women were okay. And I remember this one, she was Pakistani. And there was this whisper, 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 whisper. And it's like, what? She has cellulite. It's like, we're not shooting her ass. You know, it's like she walks in, she gets in the tub. We don't see the back of her legs. And if we're seeing a lot of dimpling, that's a lighting problem, not a her problem. What the fuck is wrong with you? And they gave me this look of death, and I can guess the things they said behind the scenes. But why because with, you know, with male superheroes, the Iron Man suit, the Batman suit, guys don't have to be ripped to look good in those things, because additive, right? You just add on layers of armor that look like muscles, so any dude can be totally buff. Whereas women, it's all about, oh, the woman has to fit the look, not creating a look to fit the woman. And that's messed up. And that's not straight dudes demanding that. Because if you go into actual porn, and I used to interview porn stars as part of the show. First of all, the cosmetic surgery scarring that nobody sees in the actual product, because they either shoot around it or airbrush it out, they are hellish because they've had implants from taken, put in, taken out, put in, taken out. They've needed so many corrective surgeries because of ruptures or corrections or whatever. You see the liposuction scars. You see it. And it is, ooh, that looks painful, you know? And I really think a lot of guys would be totally fine with a more natural body. And this is where we get into, you know, that there's a whole bunch of love songs by boy bands and things like that. You know, that was it One Direction? You know, you light up the room like nobody else. That one?
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't know you're beautiful. You know that one?
I've seen the criticism of that song that it's he loves you because you're beautiful enough to be a trophy, but broken enough to never leave him. And I admit, I got that same feeling from that song. I never liked it because it's, you're beautiful because you don't know you're beautiful. Right. I'm like, that does not sit well with me.
But also, flaws are subjective. You know, yeah. I have very atypical taste in everyone. And so I'm like, no, a lot of people think certain things are attractive because they have status. The skinny blonde is status. And I liked that in the Barbie movie, when they did the whole make the Kens jealous thing, and even at the beginning, they treated Issa Rae and I don't know who that very cute brunette girl was. But there's an example, you know, the plus size Barbie.
Oh, I think that's Nicola Coughlan.
They dressed
no,
her
Nicola Coughlan
well.
is redheaded in the movie.
Okay.
Because Nicola Coughlan is the one that my boyfriend said looks like me. And
oh, that's always dicey.
Well, it was just he had walked through the room while his sister was watching it and looked at the screen like, wait, is that song? No, wait, what? But like she even had my hair in the Barbie movie.
Is she?
She
was in Bridgerton.
Yes.
Oh,
but you know, she was in a good show. Don't worry.
Well, Dairy
Girls. Yeah. So for context, she's the one who's giving out the Nobel Prize in the opening sequence, and so like, she even had my
girl from Bridgerton.
Yeah, and she even had my hair. Like she's got the bright cherry red hair, and I'm like, oh, now she really looks like me.
You see how in Barbie she's styled to make the best of her features, whereas in Bridgerton they deliberately make her look kind of dumpy.
They do that in Dairy Girls as well.
Okay, Dairy Girls it makes more sense. Yeah, everybody looks a little dressed comedy, out. Yeah.
I can't speak to Dairy Girls, but I have to defend Bridgerton. That is part of the story.
Yes, that's part
where,
of it. Yeah,
her mother is forcing her into
twist. Yeah.
her mother is forcing her into unflattering outfits to shame her into losing weight.
Yeah. But it's like
which
that. I liked that in Barbie, the Sharon Rooney is the actress's name. And she was there, and they treated her like any other Barbie. And what I didn't understand is, why is she not ordinary Barbie? What about her? I'm trying to think, because she wasn't Dr. Barbie. She wasn't President Barbie. She was one of the girls. She was Barbie. The Barbie line did put out a plus size Barbie. And that
they started diversifying like back in 2016 at least. If not before.
Yeah, they already had black Barbies back in the 90s, did they? Or
well, they had caramel Barbies.
Yeah.
Because that's why I thought it's funny how I remember that Barbie I had being I remember why I remembered it differently, because my sister got as a gift one of the Tiffany's, who's darker skinned, darker haired. And I like that doll better. So I put the Queen of Hearts dress on the Tiffany doll. And I was
makes
happy.
Sense.
I was doing Regina from Once Upon a Time before it existed. It's like, that was a need.
Honestly, I can see how that would look even better.
Yeah.
That red dress with the darker skin and hair. Yeah, that would look even better.
Yeah. And I mean, they did do a there has been a whole thing about plus size Barbie. And of course, they automatically make, when they do Photoshops, they automatically make them as unattractive as possible. And the Barbies they put out weren't quite as plus sized as Sharon Rooney, but I mean, it was a big deal for, when did those dolls come out? 2016.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I remember when J-Law was coming up, they were making a big deal about her not being, the typical skinny Hollywood actress, even though she's still very...
The catty comments they made about her in the Hunger Games. Oh, it doesn't look like she's missed many meals. It's like, what is wrong with you people? And that's what I'm saying, right? What we decide is an ideal, what we decide is a flaw, is culturally constructed. And this is where we get into the really dicey thing about the politicization of preference. What different people find attractive. And
because would you believe they tried to do that in pro wrestling, and it worked for a while, but because this is Florence Pugh featuring again. She played a wrestler who had a film made about her called Paige. The film was called Fighting with My Family.
I remember hearing about that one.
Yeah, Paige was sort of an anomaly when she was signed to WWE, because at that time it was the late 2000s, early 2010s, and it was what was known as the Diva era, where rather than there would be some like wrestlers from the indies, but they would sign, catalog models and all these things and kind of try to make them into wrestlers. And Paige was obviously from a wrestling family, and they decided she was the anti-diva. She had the pale skin, the dark hair, the kind of goth look.
The Dita Von Teese of wrestling, yeah.
She was intended to be a Elizabeth Salander sort of character. And the Paige name was meant to be sort of like a pun on a hacker character, like as in web page.
Okay.
But then and she was intended to be a villain, but obviously a lot of guys found her very attractive, and so she was cheered too much, and she had only ever played heel on the indies. She could never be a face on the indies, and she could never get booed in WWE because she had a strong fan base of guys who got off on her, and then obviously a lot of girls who related to her as well.
Right. Yeah. And everybody's gonna find some. I mean, Florence Pugh is, in my opinion, sexy as shit. And the juxtaposition of her and Scarlett Johansson in the Black Widow movie, because Scarlett Johansson is somebody who's pretty, but she doesn't have that raw sexuality.
She's kind of more like, she's more like a vintage Hollywood star.
Yeah. And which is why I thought she was wrong for a throwback Cold War era Russian spy. At Florence
It was meant to be
Pugh,
Emily Blunt, actually.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Emily Blunt has a heart. Scarlett Johansson is one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
But she is so inert in everything she does. And that's why it's that same quality that Margot Robbie brought to Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
That she's the respectable female lead. Therefore, she can't be too sexy. And I'm like, why the hell not?
And like that's one of my things where obviously I've discussed how I've had struggles with my own sexuality growing up so religious. And so it's like when I first heard the quote from Margot Robbie about how, oh, well, she doesn't have genitalia because, it's plastic, so she doesn't have a sex drive. And I had this immediate reaction of, great, I'm being incriminated again. Now, actually, in the movie, it worked. It made sense. But, I did have that knee-jerk reaction to that concept because I'm like, so are we criminalizing female sexuality yet again? Because it feels like there's this weird
it was
message.
That scene of, we don't have genitals, and Kay goes, I have all the genitals. And
which I mean, it goes with the idea of a little 6-year-old girl seeing Barbie, and it's like, oh, I know what she doesn't have because of what I have, but takes Ken's clothes off, and it's like, okay, I don't know what goes there.